Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. This is your host, Jim Harshaw, and I'm bringing you another solo episode today. We're talking about how to turn hard work into inspired action. And there's a difference there, right? I was a Division I All-American wrestler. It took a lot of really hard work, a lot of pain and suffering. I was voted the hardest worker on the team for 3 straight years, my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And it was waking up early in the morning, going over to University Hall, which is the old basketball arena, grabbing a 45-pound plate and running up and down the stairs holding this plate above my head, or getting a partner if I was lucky enough to get a partner and doing buddy carries up and down the stairs and running sprints around the concourse and ridiculous just push-ups and all kinds of different things in between the sprints. And just this is, above and beyond the regular workouts. And it's a lot of hard work. All summer long, I would drive around all around the East Coast, go working wrestling camps. I would go to the Naval Academy and then Clarion University and all these University of Virginia, where I went to school, and just working wrestling camps so that I could just train with the college wrestlers who were there, right? And make a few bucks while I was doing it. And so it's hard work, right? But it's a little bit unfair to call this hard work because I was inspired. It was inspired action, right? It's not something that a lot of people could do. And you're probably doing something that would not be inspired action for me, or maybe something you have achieved in your life. It would have been really hard work for me to do because it would not have been inspired action. So how do you find that in your life now? How do you get to that point where you see elite athletes? It's the easiest really to see that in the athletic world, to see elite athletes doing things that are just absolute pain and suffering and hell to go through, but you realize they're doing it because they're driven to do it. How do you become driven like that? And we see that in entrepreneurship is another area that we see it easily. Is you look at Steve Jobs. He created a massively successful company. The I don't know if it is right now. It's been the last few years between ExxonMobil and Apple to being the wealthiest companies in the world, on the planet. And how do you create something like that? You don't create it through hard work. You create it through inspired action. I'm working with a client right now who I'm actually going to have on the podcast at some point whenever he gets his book ready, but he's writing a book. And this guy works incredibly hard already, and he's got an extremely demanding job. And somehow he's finding time, and I'm actually working with him on a weekly basis, coaching him, but to get this book done. And why does he want to get this book done when he's got so much else on his plate, so many other balls in the air? It's not hard work. It's inspired action. Yeah, it looks hard from the outside in, and it is. He has to wake up early, and he has to say no to certain things, and he has to really focus and take time and energy and focus it into doing this. And yeah, it's what we call traditionally hard work, but it's inspired. It's inspired action. You can't do this kind of thing if you're not inspired. And so how do you get inspired, right? I watch this, my kids and I are on a kick of watching this TV show called Chasing Monsters. It's on Netflix. And this guy, Cyril Chaquette, is the host, and he travels all around the world and just tries to catch the biggest fish on the planet. I mean, he's in oceans, he's in rivers, he's in lakes, and he goes to some of the most remote places on the planet, and he jumps into the water with these fish. He one episode that we watched recently, he was actually he was in he was in Africa and he was fishing. He was out by himself, him and his cameraman apparently, who was following him around everywhere, right? And they're out there, and there's alligators everywhere, and elephants, and just a lot of dangers, right, all around. And these rangers see him, and they motor their boat over to him, like, hey, you basically tell him, we have to escort you out of here. It's too dangerous. You can't be out here, right? And you can't do that kind of thing unless you're inspired, right? It's not just a grind for him to do this. Like, it's inspired action. I mean, this guy jumps into the deepest mud. He's up to his knees in mud, and he's losing his shoes so he can stomp out to the edge of the water to cast his rod to try to catch a fish. And it's disgusting. I love adventure. I would go on about 95% of his adventures with him, but there's like 5% of the stuff that I'm like, man, I don't know if I'd go that far. I mean, I would do most of this stuff, but it's inspired. He's inspired to do this, which makes him driven to go to extremes. So when you look around you and you see people doing things that are really hard, a lot of people look at me, what I do, I have a full-time job and coaching and podcasts, 4 kids and a puppy, by the way, and a cat and a fish. And it's really busy, right? And people go, man, you're just, one of my coworkers told me, like, you're just wired a little bit differently. And yeah, it's inspired action, because I bring you this podcast because I know that it changes your life. I know that it's a drip of positivity, in perspective, in mindset into your life. So I'm inspired to bring this to you, because when I get your emails, when I get your tweets, when I get your responses and feedback, yours, and then for those who end up becoming clients of mine and their feedback, which is ratcheted up 100 times more, the impact that I can have, like, that's inspired action. Like, it drives me. It's my purpose. It aligns with my values, and therefore I can do hard things. I just interviewed a guy named Rourke Denver, Navy SEAL, and he is the 3rd Navy SEAL that I have had on the podcast. Haven't published his episode yet, but it's coming up here in a few weeks. But Rourke Denver, how about that name, by the way? Rourke Denver. It's like a perfect Navy SEAL name. And by the way, if you're a Navy SEAL fanatic like I am, episode 132, Tom Shea, and episode 45, way back, over 100 episodes ago, episode 45, Mark Devine. Those are both Navy SEALs who I've interviewed as well. Fascinating. But anyway, Rourke Denver told me, this is the truth. You'll hear this when you listen to the podcast coming up. He said, I asked him about the hardest part of Navy SEAL training, and he said, honestly, Jim, it was all fun. And he told me the hardest part was actually the some of the writing stuff for the scuba diving and doing the gas charts and whatnot. And I'm a scuba diver myself, and so just doing some of the physics of that. He said that's the hardest part, but he said the whole thing was fun. And it's like, obviously it wasn't fun. It was pain and suffering, but it was inspired action for him. That's why he said it was fun. It was inspired. Not everybody can do that, because not everybody's inspired to do that. If you're inspired to write, you write. If you're inspired to serve your country and become among the most elite fighting forces on the planet that the planet's ever seen, then you put yourself through Navy SEAL training. And maybe you succeed, maybe you fail, but that's almost irrelevant, because inspired action is an awesome feeling. Go way back to episode number 5 with Kyle Maynard. He was born a quadruple amputee. Put yourself in that place once. Quadruple amputee his entire life. The guy's climbed mountains. He's written New York Times bestselling books. He's inspired millions across the globe. He speaks in front of audiences. Absolutely fascinating what he's done. Eric Weinmeier. Let's see here. I'm going to look up his episode number real quick, because I don't have that handy on me. 96. Eric Weinmeier. He went blind at age 12 or 13. Went blind. And what's holding you back, by the way, right? You got arms and legs. Can you see? Like, he went blind, He wasn't born blind, so he knows what it felt like to see, and he lost that going into his teenage years. Talk about the impact of that. What's he doing? Well, he summited Everest, kayaked the Grand Canyon. I'm a whitewater kayaker. I've kayaked class 5, massive, man-eating whitewater. The Grand Canyon is there's a long series of just class 5s. Class 5 is the highest, supposedly the highest rating is class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 is unnavigable. And so 5 is the highest. And it's terrifying. It's fun. It's hard work. It's also inspired action. So he's done all these amazing things. He's written multiple books. He speaks. He has this massive summit called No Limits. And how does he do it? Inspired action. So you're saying, okay, Jim, I get it. Inspired. Okay, Jim, I get it. You're like, okay. Inspired action. You keep saying this. I want that. How do I get it? Jim, I'm not inspired right now. How do I get that thing that you're talking about, this inspired action? I feel like I'm ready. I've got more potential in me. I'm ready to unleash my potential on the world, but I just don't know where to go, right? I don't know what that inspired action is for me. I feel adrift, or I feel like I'm going through the motions. Well, here's my question for you. Have you done the work? Have you done the work? The world will lead you to not be inspired, because when you go through the world, you look around, it's average. The average is around you, right? And so have you increased the average of the people, of the standards of the people you surround yourself with? Have you done the work to create your environment of excellence? Have you actually done the work to identify what is most meaningful to you? Have you done the work to identify your goals and write down your goals and learned a system for updating those goals and replicating those goals and reviewing those goals and honing those goals and optimizing your action items? Have you done the work? And if you haven't, you got to do it. Okay. And this, I did not come into this episode planning to plug this, but I'm actually opening the doors to Reveal Your Path in a couple of weeks here. So go to if you go to my website, just go to jimharshawjr.com/coaching. You'll see the link to the opportunity. There's 3 levels. So last time I launched, I only had 1 level. There's 3 levels now that are available to you. It's available to, no matter your budget, no matter how much time bandwidth you have in your life, there's one that's right for you. But have you done the work? Whether you do it with me, whether you do it with somebody else, have you done the work? And I'll caution you to say, I can do this on my own. Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey and the highest performers on the planet haven't done, LeBron James, they didn't do it on their own. Get help. Get accountability. Get a coach. Go to a counselor. Get help. Invest in yourself. So get outside of your own head and have somebody help you do this to create inspired action. One of my clients, matter of fact, I'm going to have him on the podcast because he's just incredible, and I'm trying to sprinkle in some episodes with quote unquote regular guys. Okay, it's like it's easy to relate to regular people, but I bring on these celebrities and semi-celebrities and people who have done 30 Ironmans and an Ironman a day for 30 days, like Wayne Kurtz did. And so, what episode of Wayne Kurtz, by the way? I'll give you that one because that's just a ridiculous episode. That is episode 47, Wayne Kurtz. An Ironman a day for 30 days. Yeah, I know I can't relate to that guy either. But when you find out that there are regular people just like you who are actually executing and living a life of inspired action, like Isaac Greeley, and wait till you hear some of the stuff this dude does and this stuff that he pulls off, and something he just pulled off about a month ago that he shared with my Inner Circle Reveal Your Path Pro. It's ridiculous, right? He stepped into his fear. he stepped into his fear. Helen Maroulis, who I had on the show not that long ago, episode 143. I'm throwing a lot of this out at you, these numbers here. Episode 143, Helen Maroulis, 45, 47, 132, all these great episodes. And I'll have all these in the action plan, so don't worry about trying to remember them, all these episodes. So jimharshawjr.com/action, and you'll have all the links and just episode numbers here. So no need to memorize all those. But Helen talks, she's an Olympic gold medalist, female wrestler, first ever Olympic gold medalist from the United States. And she talked about, she had to step onto the mat and face her fear against the most decorated wrestler who's ever walked on the face of the earth. It was a woman, Saori Yoshida was her name, from Japan, multiple time Olympic and world champion, most decorated, best wrestler in the history of the world. Helen's got to step on the mat and face this woman. And she has fear. And she talked about this fear, and she talked about the fear face, leading up to the Olympics and failures and struggles. But how does she do that? How does she tells you, in one of her quotes, I pulled out of that episode, and you'll see it in the action plan if you grab that action plan, is whatever you fear, run toward it. It's like, and I was just talking to one of my clients the other day. It's like, he was kind of nervous about something I was suggesting he do. And I'm like, you feel some anxiety? You feel some fear around it? He said, yep. I said, that's a sign that you're moving the right direction. You're not going to grow if you stay comfortable. And that's what Isaac did. He actually committed to us. This is my client that I'm going to have on the podcast. I already interviewed him, but the podcast is coming next week. And he committed to us on our group call, on our Saturday morning mastermind call. He said, guys, next month I'm going to come back to you with something, a new, big, hairy, audacious, scary goal. And he came back the next month. He said, actually, I didn't come back to you with a new goal, guys. He goes, I actually had an opportunity to do something scary, and I did it. And I talk about it in that episode. It's pretty awesome. And so what is that thing for you? What's that scary thing that you want to do, but it's too fearful? Once you figure out why, once you get inspired to do it, everything changes. Then you can start stepping into your fears. Then you can start doing these things that are scary. Then you can start looking at other people going, I see now why they're able to put themselves through pain and suffering. And that pain and suffering might be saying no to the birthday cake that's in the conference room at work, right? That scary thing, that hard thing might be waking up an hour earlier. If you wake up an hour earlier, by the way, every day for a year, you get 9 40-hour work weeks. Is that a hard thing to do? Maybe. Not if you're inspired, though, right? You look at people who wake up early. Like I get up usually around 5:30 or so every day. Sometimes 5:15 today. It's like inspired action. Inspired action creates that, right? Maybe you want to work out more. Maybe you want to fix your relationship and have a conversation with your spouse, or go to counseling, or see a marriage therapist. It's like, that's scary, but are you inspired to do it? When you figure out what's important to you, when you do the work, all this hard, quote unquote, hard work becomes inspired. And if you haven't done the work, you don't have a right to complain. You don't have room to say, yeah, but I don't know what it is for me. If you haven't invested in yourself, time, money, energy, doing a productive pause. And if you've listened to any of my episodes, you know what a productive pause is. It's the single most important habit of every successful person you'll ever talk to. And it's defined as this. It's a short period, and I've modified this definition for those longtime listeners. I've tweaked this a little bit because it makes more sense this way. It's a short period of focused intention around specific actions that leads to clarity of action and peace of mind. Clarity of action and peace of mind, because that's what you're looking for. That's why you're listening to this podcast. That's why you're on the treadmill, you're driving, you're on your commute, or whatever it is. You're listening to this because you want clarity of action and peace of mind. You want that inspired action. And maybe you already have it in some areas, but not in other areas. If you're like, you've got to do that same work that's creating inspired action in one area of your life, you've got to replicate that in another area of your life. And I had that inspired action in my life way back when I was 20 years ago, when I was competitive, when I was competing, when I was wrestling. And 19 years ago when I graduated. Gosh, it's getting up there. And I knew exactly what my inspired action was. And so when I failed and struggled, if you watch my TEDx talk, I talk about, why I teach my children to fail and my personal failure and failures along the way. how was I able to keep getting up one more time every time and work harder than anybody else on my team who were also some elite wrestlers? A national runner-up was on that team. Another All-American was on that team. How was I able to outwork these guys? And maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I got voted the team's hardest worker that year. But I mean, who knows who was truly the hardest worker? But I think I was, and those guys might think they were. But it's like they're we all worked our tails off. So it's probably splitting hairs at the end of the day. And how were we able to do that? It's through inspired action. And I had that then. It's like, so, okay, how did I push through that and get finally, keep pushing, keep working, and finally get on the podium? And then I had that inspired action. And then, fast forward like 10, 12, 15 years of my life. And I had another moment like that failure moment where I was broken. I didn't have any money in the bank. Actually, we had tens of thousands of dollars in debt. We had a failed business, a failing marriage. I wasn't spending enough time with my kids. I was in the worst physical shape of my life. I was like, man, this wasn't supposed to happen to me. Like, I have 2 degrees from the number 1 public school in the country, and I was an All-American. I was the youngest Division I head coach in the country. I was an Olympic hopeful, trained at the Olympic Training Center. Like, all these great things. Started my first business. That was a success. Sold that. And like, here I am staring at failure and doubt and hopelessness and despair and being broken. I said, what was in place in my life when I was able to take inspired action? What was in place in my life when I turned failure into success before? When I was able to be persistent, when I was able to be motivated and inspired and work despite the odds. And I knew what my values were. I had those values aligned with my goals. I had an environment of excellence. I had the right people in my life, and the right media in my life, and the right self-talk. And I had a plan for follow-through, right? So it's core values, goals, environment of excellence, follow-through. I had those things in place in my life. And you know what? Once you get those things in place in your life, failure's still going to happen. I hate to break your heart like that, but failure, struggle, adversity, it's still going to happen. But you're going to be able to get up. And that's what matters. Perseverance, getting up, persistence. That's what creates success. You're going to have a hard time doing that in something you're not inspired to do. Someone's going to have a whip and cracking that whip on you because it's going to be hard. But if you want to be like, you think of all the great names through history, like Thomas Edison and Abraham Lincoln, right? Failure. Steve Jobs, failure. Got fired from this is the president of the company he started, Apple, before he got brought back. Fired, right? Oprah Winfrey, fired from the TV station. Michael Jordan, everybody knows that story. He was fired, or he was cut from his high school basketball team. Nick Foles, right? Nick Foles almost quit football a couple years ago. NFL champion, world champion, Super Bowl champion. Nick Foles, quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Backup. He was backup. He's a pretty decent quarterback, and then, starting in the NFL, and then he got bumped by Carson Wentz, this young upstart. He's a backup, thought about quitting, Super Bowl champion. So take a productive pause. Do the work. If you don't believe that you can be successful, maybe you believe it logically, and this is important. If you believe it logically, but you don't believe it in your heart, you don't believe it emotionally, you've got to connect those two. You've got to connect your logical belief. Yeah, sure, I know, Jim, I can make $1 million. I know, Jim, I can lose the weight. I know I can have a healthy relationship. I know I can do that. I can, run an Ironman. I know that logically, but emotionally, there's some doubt there. Well, you've got to do this work. It's called a cognitive conversion. I'm going to throw another episode number at you, 139, episode 139. Again, that'll be in the action plan. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action to grab that. But episode 139, cognitive conversion. I coach you through how to create a change in mindset, a change in belief, not just logically, because you know you can do it logically, but how do you emotionally make that switch so that you can have inspired action? That's all for today. If you do want to join us in the next Reveal Your Path group, we're starting here middle of August, but the doors are open, so you can go to my website. You can register. There's 3 levels there. I'm actually, as I'm recording this, still working on updating that page to make sure all 3 levels are available. So anyway, 3 levels. There's one that fits your time availability. There's one that fits your budget for sure. So make sure you take action. check out that. Just go to my website, jimharshawjr.com, click on the coaching link, and you'll see that. Or go to revealyourpath.com as well as another way to access that. But as always, until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.